the cause and conditions of humankind's being in samsara. That a person is in samsara results from the fact that his mind, or manas, and consciousness, or vijnana, develop on the ground of the storehouse consciousness, or citta. This means that because of the aspect of non-enlightenment of the storehouse consciousness, he is said to be in possession of ignorance, and thus is bound to remain in samsara. Mind. The mentality that emerges is the state of non-enlightenment, which incorrectly perceives and reproduces the world of objects, and, conceiving that the reproduced world of objects is real, continues to develop deluded thoughts. This mind has 5 different names. The first is called the activating mind, for without being aware of it, it breaks the equilibrium of mind by the force of ignorance. The second is called the evolving mind, for it emerges contingent upon the agitated mind as the subject that perceives incorrectly. The third is called the reproducing mind, for it reproduces the entire world of objects as a bright mirror reproduces all material images. When confronted with the objects of the 5 senses, it reproduces them at once. It arises spontaneously at all times and exists forever reproducing the world of objects in front of the subject. The fourth is called the analytical mind, for it differentiates what is defiled and what is undefiled. The fifth is called the continuing mind, for it is united with deluded thoughts and continues uninterrupted. It retains the entire karma, good and bad, accumulated in the immeasurable lives of the past, and does not permit any loss. It is also capable of bringing the results of the pain, pleasure, etc. of the present and the future to maturity. In doing so, it makes no mistakes. It can cause one to recollect suddenly the things of the present and the past, and to have sudden and unexpected fantasies of the things to come. The triple world, therefore, is unreal, and is of mind only. Apart from it, there are no objects of the 5 senses and of the mind. What does this mean? Since all things are, without exception, developed from the mind and produced under the condition of deluded thoughts, all differentiations are no other than the differentiations of one's mind itself. Yet the mind cannot perceive the mind itself. The mind has no marks of its own that can be ascertained as a substantial entity as such. It should be understood that the conception of the entire world of objects can be held only on the basis of a person's deluded mind of ignorance. All things, therefore, are just like the images in a mirror that are devoid of any objectivity that one can get hold of. They are of the mind only and are unreal. When the deluded mind comes into being, then various conceptions or dharmas come to be. And when the deluded mind ceases to be, then these various conceptions cease to be. Consciousness. What is called consciousness, or vijnana, is the continuing mind. Because of their deep-rooted attachment, ordinary people imagine that I and mine are real, and cling to them in their illusions. As soon as objects are presented, this consciousness rests on them and discriminates the objects of the 5 senses and of the mind. This is called vijnana, that is, the differentiating consciousness, or the separating consciousness, or again it is called the object discriminating consciousness. The propensity for discrimination of this consciousness will be intensified by both the intellectual defilement of holding fast to perverse views and the affectional defilement of indulgence in passion. That the deluded mind and consciousness arise from the permeation of ignorance is something that ordinary people cannot understand. The followers of the Hinayana, with their wisdom, likewise fail to realize this. Those bodhisattvas who, having advanced from their first stage of correct faith by setting the mind upon enlightenment through practicing contemplation, have come to realize the Dharmakaya, can partially comprehend this. Yet even those who have reached the final stage of bodhisattvahood cannot fully comprehend this. Only the enlightened ones, or Buddhas, have thorough comprehension of it. Why? The mind though pure in its self-nature from the beginning, is accompanied by ignorance. Being defiled by ignorance, a defiled state of mind comes into being. But, though defiled, the mind itself is eternal and immutable. Only enlightened ones are able to understand what this means. What is called the essential nature of mind is always beyond thoughts. It is therefore defined as immutable. When the one world of reality is yet to be realized, the mind is mutable and is not in perfect unity with suchness. Suddenly, a deluded thought arises. This state is called ignorance. Now, as far as translator notes on this section, the triple world is unreal and is of mind only. The oldest recorded expression of this statement encountered in many scriptures of later origin is found in one of the earliest Mahayana sutras of the 1st or 2nd century CE, called the 10 Stages Sutra, or Das Bhumika Sutra, which was later incorporated, most likely in Central Asia or China, into the Avatamsaka Sutra. This statement was not only taken up by the Huayan school, but was also utilized as one of the authentic proofs to provide a foundation to the Yogacara system. In fact, the virtual founder of the Yogacara school, Vasubandhu, composed a commentary on the Dasabhumika Sutra. As it appears in the sutra, the original sentence may be translated, quote, "What belongs to this triple world is mind only," close quote. The triple world is the world of desire, or kamadhatu, the world of form or materiality, or rupadhatu, and the world of formlessness, or arupyadhatu. With regard to ignorance, ignorance is the most fundamental problem of Buddhism, comparable in its significance to that of original sin in Christianity. The author's avowed determination to make his discourse as brief as possible should be appreciated, but often he has achieved his aim at the risk of being understood incorrectly, or of not being understood at all. Fazang, the most celebrated commentator on the text, says, 1. That ignorance alone becomes the source of defiled states of being. It is the subtlest. No other state of being can be the origin of this. It is therefore said in the text that ignorance emerges suddenly. 2. Commenting on a quotation from a sutra, he says, "Suddenly" means beginninglessly, since the passage quoted makes clear that there is no other state of being prior to the state of ignorance. 3. The word "suddenly" is not used from the standpoint of time, but is used to account for the emergence of ignorance without any instance of inception. It is clear, then, that Fazang interpreted "suddenly" as without beginning. Accordingly, the conclusion may be drawn that ignorance, the primary cause of the non-enlightened state of human beings, has no beginning, but does have an ending, since it disappears with enlightenment. A monk of Ming China named Zenji, in his commentary to the Awakening of Faith, written in 1599, glosses "suddenly" as buju, which may mean unconsciously, or without being aware of the reason. If Huran, or suddenly, is a translation of a Sanskrit word, the original word aksamat may be posited. Aksamat means without reason or accidentally. If this is correct, the following metaphor quoted by another Chinese monk, Zui Xuan, who died in 1038, of the Huayan school, in interpreting, quote, "suddenly," is particularly relevant. He writes, quote, "Ignorance is like dust which has suddenly collected on a mirror, or like clouds which have suddenly appeared in the sky." In the earlier part of the text, the claim was made that human beings are originally enlightened, and that ignorance or non-enlightenment are not intrinsic, but accidental. Ignorance results from an unconscious and accidental estrangement from the essence of mind, or suchness. In the absence of the awareness of estrangement, however, the origin of ignorance cannot be an object of intellectual analysis. For the intellect, the origin of ignorance is unimaginable, unless mythologized. Hence, quote, "suddenly" would appear to be an excellent solution.